California just lost 20% of its refining capacity in 4 months. Now the pipeline connecting what's left to oil fields has shut down completely. The fuel crisis is no longer theoretical. On December 15th, California witnessed the permanent closure of its biggest inland crude transport system. The San Pablo Bay pipeline, which had moved oil from Bakersfield's production zones to refineries up north for 7 decades, ceased operations. The operator was hemorrhaging $2 million monthly. Continuing was financially impossible. Refineries across Northern California lost their main crude supply source in an instant. The infrastructure that fed gasoline to the Bay Area for generations went dark. There was no public warning, no contingency strategy, just an abrupt halt that's now creating ripple effects statewide. Robert Waldron leads Core Energy Infrastructure Trust as its top executive. His organization controls Crimson Midstream, the operator behind the San Pablo Bay pipeline. Just days ago, Waldron issued an urgent communication to Governor Newsom's administration. This message detailed catastrophic financial difficulties stemming from operational expenses that had grown completely unmanageable. Waldron made it crystal clear that the pipeline couldn't produce sufficient income to meet even fundamental running costs. Each passing month pushed his organization further into financial ruin. December 15th marked the moment when continuation became impossible. No solution existed. This transport system stretched 300 miles, linking Kern County's extraction sites to processing facilities around the Bay Area. At peak performance, it moved 100,000 barrels of crude daily. That crude transformed into the fuel powering vehicles, the diesel running commercial trucks, and the aviation fuel serving San Francisco's airport. It drove the economic engine of Northern California. With the pipeline gone, processing plants must now secure alternative crude supplies or dramatically scale back operations. Most alternatives carry significantly higher costs and require substantial time to establish. Certain refineries have zero practical alternatives whatsoever.
Crimson Midstream managed this infrastructure for numerous years, pouring millions into upkeep and safety enhancements. They swapped out deteriorating segments. They modernized pump facilities with current technology. They put in cutting-edge surveillance equipment. Despite these enormous expenditures, throughput declined consistently year over year. Producers in Bakersfield transported less crude than previously. Processing facilities around the Bay Area handled less California crude, steadily shifting toward imported supplies instead.
The pipeline functioned at merely 30% capacity on typical days, yet fixed expenses stayed identical whether the system transported 30,000 barrels or 100,000 barrels. The financial calculations proved absolutely devastating for the organization. Running costs totaled $8 million monthly. Income from existing volumes generated merely $6 million each month. A $2 million monthly deficit continued for 18 consecutive months. The organization absorbed $36 million in combined losses, desperately hoping that volumes would rebound. Recovery never materialized. Waldron's communication stated explicitly that the organization examined every conceivable option. They weighed rate hikes, they enacted aggressive expense cuts, they pursued alternative income streams. Nothing succeeded. The financial reality was insurmountable. Processing facilities in Northern California relying directly on this pipeline include Marathon's Martinez operation, Phillips 66's Rodeo facility, and Valero's Benicia plant. Valero has already declared the Benicia facility's closure in April. Phillips 66 transformed their Rodeo plant for renewable diesel manufacturing. Marathon faces severe profitability challenges. The processing facilities that sustained the pipeline's economic viability are vanishing sequentially. The infrastructure supporting California's fuel distribution for decades became worthless without clients. The moment chosen for this closure couldn't have been more disastrous. Phillips 66 shut down its Los Angeles processing facility earlier this month. Valero closes Benicia in April. California loses 1/5 of its total processing capacity within a 4-month span. Now the pipeline feeding the surviving facilities has ceased operations as well. This cascade of shutdowns creates a supply emergency unprecedented in state history. Every component of California's fuel infrastructure is collapsing simultaneously. Alternative crude delivery methods encounter enormous barriers that can't be quickly resolved. Vessels could potentially bring crude oil to Bay Area docks, but marine facilities lack capacity for substantial volume growth. Railway transportation from Bakersfield would demand hundreds of tank cars running daily. Such rail infrastructure doesn't currently exist. Moving crude by truck would necessitate thousands of trips weekly. Road systems would suffer catastrophic damage. Expenses would be utterly prohibitive. The pipeline represented economic logic precisely because all alternatives fail at necessary scale. Bakersfield producers now confront their own emergency with the pipeline dead. They extract 70% of California's oil, approximately 280,000 barrels daily. The San Pablo Bay pipeline served as their principal route to processing facilities. Without it, producers must locate new buyers or cease well operations entirely. Transporting oil south to Los Angeles processing facilities costs considerably more, and those facilities are closing anyway. Selling California crude overseas requires reaching harbors, which means trucking or rail at massive cost. The shutdown particularly impacts specialized crude varieties that California processing facilities were purpose-built to handle. California extracts heavy crude requiring particular processing configurations. Not every facility can manage California crude effectively. Bay Area processing plants were constructed over decades to handle this precise crude type. Imported light crude from elsewhere demands entirely different processing methods. Facilities must reconfigure their operations or accept substantially diminished efficiency. Either option raises costs transferred directly to drivers at filling stations. Kern County's complete economy rests fundamentally on oil extraction. The county produces $15 billion annually from petroleum activities. 20,000 jobs connect directly to oil production and transportation. The pipeline shutdown endangers everything. When producers can't transport oil affordably, they cease production. Wells get permanently sealed. Employment vanishes. Government revenue disappears instantly. Economic destruction waves through Central Valley towns possessing no contingency plan. Environmental issues complicate any potential remedy. Constructing new pipelines faces decades of authorization struggles and environmental litigation. Enlarging marine facilities demands environmental assessment studies consuming years. Railway transportation through residential zones raises serious safety issues. Trucking increases pollution and infrastructure damage substantially. Every pipeline alternative generates fresh problems. California's regulatory system makes rapid problem-solving virtually impossible. The Strategic Petroleum Stockpile can't assist California in this emergency. Federal reserves contain light sweet crude mismatched to California processing facility requirements entirely. Emergency releases wouldn't address the core problem of delivering crude to facilities. Even if compatible crude existed in stockpiles, transportation bottlenecks would persist unchanged. The pipeline's closure generated a logistics emergency without straightforward solutions. Global crude markets have already reacted to California's predicament. Traders recognize California requires replacement crude urgently. Prices for compatible heavy crude varieties are climbing steeply. Transportation rates from Canada and South America jumped immediately. Financial markets incorporated California's desperation within hours. Every replacement barrel costs substantially more than pipeline-delivered Bakersfield crude. Those expenses are impacting drivers at filling stations currently. This week, everyone is already spending more because of choices made 8 days prior. Waldron's communication to the governor contained a harsh warning about cascading infrastructure breakdowns. When the pipeline ceased, all linked infrastructure became instantly unprofitable. Pump facilities along the route employed hundreds of personnel. Service centers supported dozens of subcontractors. Storage facilities throughout the route served regional fuel distribution. All these operations depended completely on pipeline activity. Without it, they're shutting down as well. Each closure makes any potential restart more difficult and exponentially costlier. The pipeline's financial records expose the wider emergency confronting California's energy industry. Constructed in the 1950s, the pipeline was initially planned for 50 years of operation. Significant improvements in the 1990s prolonged operations another generation. The organization invested $40 million on upgrades in merely the past decade. That complete infrastructure investment became valueless on December 15th. Eliminating those assets triggered additional serious financial impacts. Financial institutions holding obligations secured by pipeline assets now confront significant losses. Processing facility administrators scrambled frantically for answers before the closure. Conference discussions with crude vendors occurred daily. Transportation firms provided astronomical quotes for urgent shipments. Railway operators detailed precisely why they can't accommodate the volume. Trucking companies outlined the mathematical impossibility of transporting 100,000 barrels daily by highway. Every discussion arrived at precisely the same verdict. No practical alternative exists at any sensible price. State authorities haven't replied to Waldron's communication publicly. Behind closed doors, crisis meetings are happening currently. Representatives are assessing the effect on fuel availability statewide. Financial analysts are projecting price rises. Crisis management personnel are preparing for possible fuel scarcities. Everyone in government grasps the crisis is genuine, yet nobody possesses solutions that genuinely function. December 15th arrived and passed, and the pipeline is finished. It won't return. Worker organizations representing pipeline employees are now managing widespread terminations. 300 direct workers operated the pipeline day to day. Another 500 contractors supplied continuous maintenance and technical assistance. These represent highly specialized positions demanding specific abilities and certifications. Pipeline technicians can't simply transition careers instantly. Welders certified for pipeline work need completely different certifications for alternative industries. Control room technicians possess abilities that don't transfer to other fields. Households that depended on pipeline employment face immediate financial distress starting this week. Small oil producers in Kern County are most exposed to this closure. Large oil corporations have options, even if those options are costly. Small operators with merely a handful of wells relied completely on the pipeline. They lack financial reserves for alternative transportation approaches. They can't arrange favorable transportation rates with carriers. Numerous small producers are ceasing operations currently that the pipeline closed. Multi-generation family oil businesses are ending permanently. The oil sector's small business component in California faces total elimination. Financial ripple impacts reach far past California's boundaries. Pipeline securities held by retirement funds lost considerable value instantly. Insurance corporations with pipeline operation exposure now confront major claims. Financial institutions that financed oil extraction based on pipeline availability must reevaluate loan valuations throughout their portfolios. The closure activated force majeure provisions in numerous financial agreements. Court battles over contract violations will continue for years through legal systems. December 15th came with no resolution materializing from any quarter. The pipeline ceased flowing 8 days prior. Crude oil from Bakersfield now lacks financially viable transportation paths. Northern California processing facilities are hunting for supply from anywhere. Prices are jumping at filling stations statewide. Fuel scarcities may develop within days if answers aren't discovered immediately. The infrastructure linking California's extraction fields to its processing facilities for 70 years perished from financial exhaustion. $2 million in monthly deficits killed it. The aftermath of this closure will cost California billions of dollars. Waldron concluded his communication to the governor with a straightforward and plain declaration. The organization attempted everything humanly achievable to maintain the pipeline operational. Market circumstances rendered continuation impossible. December 15th was the ultimate day of operations. The San Pablo Bay pipeline is now deserted infrastructure. The crude oil it would have transported must locate another route to processing facilities or remain underground. California's energy emergency just became dramatically worse instantly. 8 days into this catastrophe, no practical solutions have surfaced from government or industry. Fuel prices are already rising throughout Northern California. Diesel prices are tracking closely behind. This represents merely the start. The shutdown of a single pipeline is revealing how vulnerable California's complete energy infrastructure has grown. Decades of policy choices are now colliding with financial reality. The processing facilities are shutting down. The pipelines are ceasing operations. The alternatives don't exist at necessary scale. California constructed an economy reliant on oil, while simultaneously rendering oil extraction and transportation nearly impossible. The contradictions are finally yielding tangible consequences. Kern County oil employees are losing employment. Processing facility workers face an uncertain future. Drivers are spending higher amounts with no relief visible. The San Pablo Bay pipeline closure isn't an isolated occurrence. It represents a symptom of systemic breakdown throughout California's energy sector. When infrastructure becomes unprofitable, it ceases operations. When processing facilities can't obtain crude affordably, they close. When alternatives cost excessively, they don't get constructed. The market is communicating clearly. California's existing energy policies are incompatible with sustaining dependable fuel availability. Something must transform. Either policy adjusts to reality, or reality will enforce much harsher transformations. 8 days ago, reality enforced a transformation. The pipeline perished. Now California must address the aftermath of that death. Fuel will cost more, availability will be less dependable, employment will vanish, economic harm will spread through communities relying on energy infrastructure. State government possesses no rapid solutions available. The private sector has no profitable answers. California is entering unknown territory for energy dependability.